Welcome back to ABC General Hospital Spoilers Channel. Today we're diving into one of the most thrilling and explosive storylines that's currently gripping Port Charles. The narrative we're about to explore involves daring prison escapes, dangerous partnerships, and the intense confrontation between authorities and those willing to risk everything for their freedom. If you've been following the latest developments in Port Charles, you know that things have reached a critical turning point. Valentin Casadini has made his daring escape from prison, and his arrival at Carly's home has set off a chain of events that will ultimately test loyalties, challenge moral boundaries, and push several key characters to their limits. The situation is incredibly complex, multi-layered, and involves some of the most powerful figures in Port Charles, including the relentless head of the World Security Bureau, Jack Brennan. Let's break down everything that's happening in this captivating storyline. Valentin's bold prison escape, the turning point. Valentin Casadini's escape from prison marks a pivotal moment in General Hospital's current narrative arc. For months, Valentin has been held in what was considered an extremely secure facility, isolated from the world and separated from the people he cares about most, particularly his daughter Charlotte. However, his determination to regain his freedom and reunite with his family proved stronger than the prison security measures. During a routine prison transfer, circumstances aligned that allowed Valentin to break free from custody. The escape itself was nothing short of dramatic and dangerous, showcasing Valentin's cunning and desperation. He wasn't about to spend years locked away when he had an opportunity to reclaim his life. The prison transfer, which was meant to move him to another secure facility, became his gateway to freedom. Whether it was through his own resourcefulness, assistance from unexpected allies, or a combination of both, Valentin managed to disappear from the custody of his guards and vanish into the night. The escape sent shockwaves through Port Charles the moment authorities discovered what had happened. The World Security Bureau and local law enforcement immediately mobilized, launching an intensive manhunt for the escaped prisoner. Brennan, as the head of the WSB, was notified of the breach, and his response was swift and severe. The prospect of Valentin being loose in Port Charles was not something that could be taken lightly. Valentin is no ordinary criminal. He's a highly trained operative with extensive knowledge of the underworld, dangerous connections, and the skills to evade capture. More importantly, he's a father with a compelling motivation, his daughter Charlotte. Everyone knew that Valentin would inevitably try to reach Charlotte, and that realization sent law enforcement and concerned citizens scrambling to prepare for his potential arrival in Port Charles. Carly's secret, harboring the escaped convict. What nobody anticipated was the role that Carly would play in Valentin's escape and his subsequent hiding in Port Charles. Carly, ever the strategist, and someone who has always been willing to bend the rules for those she cares about, had formed an unlikely alliance with Valentin before his escape. Their partnership was forged from a shared desire for revenge against Jack Brennan. You see, Carly's daughter Josslyn had been recruited by the WSB into dangerous operations, something that infuriated Carly. She saw Brennan as a manipulative figure who was exploiting her daughter for his own purposes and the organization's agenda. When Carly learned about Valentin's situation and realized they could work together to take down Brennan, she became invested in his cause. So when Valentin suddenly appeared at Carly's home after his escape, it wasn't entirely unexpected for him. However, Carly was torn between her alliance with Valentin and the enormous risk she would face by harboring an escaped convict. Nevertheless, despite her reservations and the danger involved, Carly made the bold decision to hide Valentin in her property. Specifically, she allowed him to take refuge in her shed, a location that would theoretically be less likely to attract immediate suspicion from authorities conducting their search. The decision was risky and could have serious legal consequences for Carly, including potential charges of harboring a fugitive. But Carly has never been someone to shy away from taking risks when it comes to protecting those she cares about or pursuing her own sense of justice. Valentin's arrival at Carly's home was dramatic and unexpected from her perspective. even though they had previously discussed their plans against Brennan. He showed up at her door, urgently requesting shelter and supplies. Carly's initial reaction was one of shock mixed with frustration. She reminded Valentin that showing up at her house in such an obvious manner was incredibly risky and could immediately draw suspicion from authorities. She urged him to leave, realizing the gravity of what his presence at her home could mean for her own safety and legal status. However, Valentin was persuasive and reminded Carly of their shared goal, taking down Jack Brennan and freeing Josslyn from the WSB's grasp. He appealed to her emotions and her sense of justice, convincing her, at least temporarily, to provide him with the refuge he desperately needed. The arrangement Carly agreed to was that Valentin would spend the night in her shed, away from the main house, where curious eyes or police officers conducting a search might easily spot him. It wasn't comfortable, and Valentin certainly made his displeasure known about the freezing conditions in the unheated shed. But it was the best option available under the circumstances. Carly provided him with basic necessities, clean clothes, a burner phone for communication, and even some Thanksgiving leftovers if memory served. These small provisions were meant to keep Valentin sustained while they figured out their next moves in their plan against Brennan, the police search, and rising tension. Meanwhile, the Port Charles Police Department and the WASB were conducting an extensive search for Valentin throughout the city. Every officer was on high alert, every available resource was being utilized, and every potential lead was being followed up with urgency. Dante Falconeri, the police commissioner, personally oversaw much of the investigation. He knew from his past interactions with Valentin that the escaped convict was extremely dangerous and capable of extreme violence if cornered. Dante was particularly concerned about Charlotte, Valentin's daughter, knowing that a desperate Valentin might attempt to contact her or even try to take her with him. Lulu Spencer, Charlotte's mother and Valentin's ex-wife, was beside herself with anxiety over the situation. She was caught in an impossible position: protect her children from a potentially dangerous father, yet also respect the bond between Charlotte and Valentin. Lulu was instructed by police to keep Charlotte inside the house and to prevent any unsupervised contact with the girl. She was devastated by what she perceived as Valentin's selfishness in escaping and creating this dangerous situation. Lulu felt that his escape was both arrogant and irresponsible, putting Charlotte at risk emotionally and potentially physically. The police presence around Lulu's home intensified as officers were stationed to watch for any sign of Valentin. Authorities were prepared for the possibility that he might attempt to contact Charlotte or try to see her. However, despite all the surveillance and precautions, Valentin had slipped through their fingers and found sanctuary at Carly's place, at least for the time being. Brennan's discovery and confrontation. It didn't take long for Jack Brennan to discover Valentin's location. As the head of the WSB and a man with extensive intelligence networks and resources at his disposal, Brennan had access to information that ordinary law enforcement did not. Through surveillance, informants, or sheer deductive reasoning, Brennan pieced together the puzzle and realized that Carly was somehow involved in Valentin's escape and was providing him shelter. When Brennan confronted Carly about harboring Valentin, he came armed with evidence and absolutely no patience for her denials or excuses. Brennan's anger was palpable and frightening. He was furious that someone as influential as Carly would be foolish enough to harbor an escaped convict and undermine his authority as head of the WASB. He made it explicitly clear to Carly that what she was doing was illegal and that she could face serious criminal charges, including potential imprisonment for her role in helping Valentin escape. Brennan wasn't making idle threats. He had the power and the authority to follow through on his warnings. He could have Carly arrested, interrogated, and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. However, Carly stood her ground. Despite Brennan's threats and intimidation, she refused to cooperate with him or reveal Valentin's exact location. Carly maintained her stubbornness, her resolve, and her commitment to her alliance with Valentin. She knew that if she gave up Valentin, her partnership with him would be ruined, and their plan to take down Brennan would evaporate. Furthermore, Carly understood that Brennan's interest in Valentin went beyond simple law enforcement. Brennan was desperate to extract information from Valentin about Caesar Faison's final project, a mysterious and potentially dangerous initiative that Brennan believed held crucial secrets. Brennan's strategic approach, avoiding collateral damage. Despite his rage and his overwhelming desire to immediately capture Valentin, Brennan realized that taking a direct, forceful approach at Carly's home might not be in his best interest. Brennan was not someone who wanted to turn this situation into a major public scandal or create unnecessary complications. He was calculated and strategic, always thinking several moves ahead. He understood that if he arrested Carly, he would face serious political and public relations fallout, especially given her family's prominence and connections in Port Charles. More importantly, Brennan knew that threatening Carly to directly or attempting to arrest her would likely cause Valentin to go deeper underground, potentially disappearing for months or even years. Such an outcome would be counterproductive to Brennan's ultimate goal of capturing Valentin and extracting the information he possessed. Therefore, Brennan decided to take a different approach. He would use more subtle, indirect methods to locate and capture Valentin without directly implicating Carly or making the situation more complicated than it already was. This strategic decision revealed Brennan's true nature as an intelligence operative rather than a straightforward law enforcement official. He was willing to bend the rules, to play the long game, and to make calculated decisions that served his ultimate objectives rather than pursuing immediate gratification through arrests and confrontations. Brennan recognized that sometimes the best way to achieve your goal is to allow a situation to develop, to gather intelligence through observation, and to strike only when you have the maximum advantage. The dangerous alliance and its implications. The alliance between Carly and Valentin represents one of the most intriguing and dangerous developments in the current Port Charles narrative. Both individuals have clear motivations for their partnership. Carly wants to protect her daughter from Brennan and the WSB, and Valentin wants to regain his freedom and reunite with Charlotte. However, their alliance is fraught with potential complications and risks. Carly is putting her own freedom and future in jeopardy by harboring a fugitive. If discovered, she could face criminal charges that could result in imprisonment and the loss of custody of her own children. The stakes for Carly are extraordinarily high. For Valentin, the situation is equally precarious. He's on the run, with every law enforcement agency in Port Charles looking for him. He's isolated, dependent on Carly's goodwill and assistance, and acutely aware that his presence in Port Charles puts everyone around him at risk. Valentin has a history of being ruthless and violent when backed into a corner, and desperation could push him to extreme measures that neither he nor Carly would ultimately want to take. The plan that Carly and Valentin have concocted against Brennan is ambitious and potentially revolutionary, but it's also incredibly risky and could easily backfire. If their plan fails or is discovered, the consequences for both of them would be severe. Carly could lose everything: her freedom, her family, her reputation. Valentin would almost certainly be returned to prison, with his escape attempt counting as additional charges against him. The broader context, Faison's secrets, and Brennan's obsession. Understanding the true depth of this storyline requires knowledge of the broader context in which it exists. Brennan's obsession with capturing Valentin isn't merely about recapturing an escaped prisoner. It's about obtaining information regarding Caesar Faison's final project. Caesar Faison was one of the most dangerous and mysterious figures in Port Charles history, and before his death, he was involved in various clandestine operations and schemes. Brennan believes that Valentin possesses crucial information about these operations, information that could be valuable to the WSB or potentially dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands. The mystery surrounding Faison's final project has been a recurring theme throughout General Hospital, with various characters chasing different pieces of the puzzle. Brennan's desperation to unlock these secrets, his willingness to go to extreme lengths to extract information from Valentin, and his calculated approach to dealing with Carly all suggest that he believes Faison's project represents something of enormous importance. Whether it's a weapons system, a blackmail operation, a money laundering scheme, or something even more sinister remains to be seen, but the stakes of this mystery are clearly very high. Josslyn's role and the emotional core of the conflict, adding another layer of complexity to this already intricate situation, is the involvement of Josslyn Jax, Carly's daughter. Josslyn has been recruited by Brennan and the WSB into dangerous operations, something that deeply disturbs and angers Carly. From Carly's perspective, her daughter is being exploited and manipulated by an organization that cares little for her safety or well-being. Brennan's recruitment of Josslyn gives Carly an intensely personal motivation for wanting to take him down. This isn't just about abstract justice or political maneuvering, it's about protecting her daughter from what she sees as predatory behavior by Brennan and the WSB. Josslyn, for her part, is deeply concerned about her mother's safety and her apparent connection to Valentin. When Josslyn learns of Valentin's escape, she immediately thinks of her mother and insists on personally watching over Carly to ensure her protection. Josslyn finds suspicious items like a first aid kit hidden behind a pillow that could suggest her mother is hiding something or someone. However, Carly is quick to come up with explanations for these items, claiming that Josslyn had used the first aid kit during a game of doctor with her younger sister Donna. Josslyn doesn't fully believe these explanations, but she's also caught between her desire to protect her mother and her fear of what might happen if she discovers the truth about Valentin's presence at their home. The unfolding drama. What comes next? As this storyline continues to unfold, several critical questions remain unanswered. Will Brennan eventually discover the full extent of Carly's involvement in Valentin's escape? Will he make good on his threats to arrest her? Will Carly and Valentin succeed in their plan to take down Brennan, or will their alliance ultimately backfire on them? Will Valentin attempt to contact Charlotte? And if so, what will be the consequences? The tension continues to mount with each passing day. Carly finds herself increasingly entangled in a web of secrets, lies, and dangerous alliances. She's taken a massive risk by harboring Valentin, and every moment he remains hidden in her shed, the likelihood of discovery increases. The police are conducting an intensive search, Brennan is actively investigating, and other characters like Josslyn and Lulu are watching for suspicious behavior. It's only a matter of time before something gives, before the pressure becomes too intense, or before someone uncovers the truth. The dynamic between Carly and Brennan is particularly fascinating because it represents a clash between two intelligent, strategically minded individuals with conflicting interests and motivations. Brennan wants Valentin captured and interrogated, while Carly wants to protect Valentin and use him as a tool in her campaign against Brennan. Neither of them is willing to back down, and neither of them is willing to compromise. This sets up an inevitable collision course where the stakes for everyone involved, including innocent bystanders like Charlotte and Josslyn, continue to rise. Character dynamics and moral complexities. What makes this storyline so compelling is the moral complexity it presents. Carly, traditionally portrayed as a strong, protective mother and a woman who often operates outside the law when she believes justice demands it, is here shown as someone willing to harbor a dangerous criminal, yet her motivations are understandable, even sympathetic. She's not helping Valentin because she's fundamentally a bad person. She's helping him because she wants to protect her daughter and believes that Brennan represents a genuine threat to her family. Similarly, Valentin is portrayed with nuance. Yes, he's an escaped convict and someone with a violent past, but he's also a father desperate to see his daughter, willing to risk everything for the possibility of reuniting with her. His alliance with Carly, while strategically useful, also represents a genuine partnership between two people who've found common ground in their mutual desire to oppose Brennan's authority and methods. Brennan, meanwhile, is characterized as a complex figure of authority. He's not simply a villain pursuing justice, he's a man obsessed with uncovering secrets, willing to bend rules to achieve his goals, and capable of calculating decisions that serve his interests while minimizing collateral damage. His decision not to immediately arrest Carly, despite her obvious involvement in harboring Valentin, reveals a sophisticated understanding of how to achieve maximum advantage from a given situation. Conclusion: a story still unfolding. The current storyline involving Valentin's escape, his hidden refuge at Carly's home, and Brennan's determined pursuit represents one of the most exciting and layered narratives in General Hospital's recent history. It combines elements of suspense, moral complexity, character drama, and high-stakes consequences that keep viewers on the edge of their seats. Every episode brings new developments, new revelations, and new complications to the situation. As this story continues to develop, fans of General Hospital can expect more twists, more confrontations, and more emotional moments involving these central characters. The outcome remains uncertain, and the potential consequences for everyone involved are enormous. Will Carly's gamble pay off? Will Valentin successfully escape the authorities? Will Brennan finally capture his quarry? These questions and many others will be answered in the episodes to come. Stay tuned to ABC General Hospital for the latest developments in this thrilling and complex storyline that continues to captivate audiences week after week.